NATO described talks with Yugoslav generals as constructive and positive. The meeting on the withdrawal of Serb troops from Kosovo will resume tomorrow morning. A very constructive day of very positive talks. That's how NATO described its meeting with Yugoslav generals to discuss the withdrawal of Serb troops from Kosovo. The two sides met for more than 5 hours before the Yugoslavs left to consult with Belgrade. They're due to return tomorrow morning. The talks are taking place in a roadside cafe at Bliar on the Kosovo-Macedonian border. Ben Brown reports from there.
A ramshackle cafe on the Macedonia-Kosovo border was the humble setting for today's historic talks. There was strict security, of course. NATO troops kept a careful watch on Serb snipers in the hills just above. The Yugoslav delegation was led by two generals, one from the army, one from the police. They had drawn the short straw today. Effectively, they were being asked to sign their country's surrender. And to add to their humiliation, this cafe is owned and run by an Albanian. The British General, Sir Mike Jackson, was here quite literally to give the Serbs their marching orders. Bundles of maps were brought in to show the Yugoslav delegation the precise routes by which their men are required to exit Kosovo. According to General Jackson's camp, today's talks were a success, even though they've been adjourned till the morning.
Each point of the military technical agreement has been discussed word by word, line by line, and sentence by sentence. What we now have is a full understanding on both sides as to the content of the military technical agreement and what it actually requires the Yugoslav delegation and the Yugoslav armed forces to do.
And what it requires them to do is to get out of Kosovo within 1 week. But tonight the talks here were suspended when the Yugoslav delegation said they needed more time to consult their political masters in Belgrade, though only, it seems, on some technical points. According to NATO, the talks around this table today were constructive and positive. Certainly a good deal of food and drink seems to have been consumed here. The fact this meeting has been adjourned until the morning is not causing concern, and it is still expected that the Serbs will sign this withdrawal agreement tomorrow. Ben Brown, BBC News, Bliar on the Kosovo-Macedonia border.
The number of British troops to go into Kosovo is to be more than doubled, some 13,000, including a battalion from the Parachute Regiment and the Royal Gurkha Rifles, will fly out to Macedonia by next weekend. The first support personnel set off from RAF Lynham in Wiltshire today. And Chinook helicopters, which will take the troops into Kosovo, left from RAF Odiham near Southampton. Our defence correspondent Mark Leahy is at NATO headquarters in Brussels. Mark, first of all, have you had any more feedback from NATO there about the talks with the Yugoslav generals today?
Yes, I mean, there's a mixture of disappointment and pleasure in the sense that they believe that the progress is genuine, that these are serious talks, that they're not just stringing it out playing for time, but also disappointment they didn't wrap it up in a day, because of course it makes it all much more complicated. Even if they come back tomorrow morning and virtually accept it right there and then, to get the withdrawal fully underway is going to be that much more difficult. But that said, they do honestly believe that they were making progress, and probably it was that these two generals really just didn't feel that they were senior enough to accept all that's being asked of them, because a lot is being asked, and they probably felt it was a little bit above their pay grade.
And what does this all mean in terms of the bombing, when the bombing may stop, and also when the troops may go into Kosovo?
It makes the bombing pause more difficult for tomorrow night. It is feasible. It's a tall order, but that means that they'd really have to be almost giving the preparatory orders tonight before coming back tomorrow to accept to NATO that this is going to happen. So they're going to have to move really fast. If they do move really fast, it's just about feasible that tomorrow night they could still order a bombing pause. But it's going to be very difficult. And then, of course, NATO is going to have to rush in as fast as they can because they want to get these troops in quickly to make the retreat irreversible so that nobody can go back on it, so that President Milosevic doesn't have time to actually go back on his word as he has so often before.
Mark Leahy in Brussels, thanks very much. In Belgrade, there have been further signs of a collapse in support for President Milosevic from within his own government. Serbia's ultra-nationalist Radical Party, which opposed the peace plan in Parliament, has now threatened to quit the government when NATO troops enter Kosovo. John Simpson's report has been seen by the Serb authorities, but not changed.
The independent television stations here, which have been almost as heavily controlled as state television during the war, reported the meeting between the NATO and Serbian military delegations only briefly. Everyone here knows what's going on, but the media still present it as a success of a kind for President Milosevic. He himself hasn't been seen on television nor in public since Wednesday, when he accepted NATO's demands. This is the start of a very difficult time for him, and he'll need all his political skills to survive. His coalition in parliament is already breaking apart. The extreme nationalist Radical Party, led by Vojislav Šešelj, whose name brought terror to Croats and Muslims during the wars of the past few years, has now decided it can't stomach the capitulation to NATO and will soon resign from the government. Mr. Šešelj made his announcement at a press conference today.
If the troops of the aggressors, the USA, Great Britain and Germany mainly, come to Kosovo and our troops withdraw completely, our ministers will be instructed to resign. We have no business in the government if Americans are marching on our holy land.
People here are already starting to worry about the dangers of civil war, with Mr. Šešelj's extreme supporters now on the loose. But this could provide President Milosevic with his big opportunity to stay in power. He can present himself as the one man strong enough to keep the country together, and at the same time as a moderate who can control all these extremists. But Mr. Milosevic's problems and Serbia's may not end there. No one knows what the military commanders think about the decision to accept NATO's terms. Only a week ago, they were boasting they could win the war. Now it's been well and truly lost. John Simpson, BBC News, Belgrade.